Jeff Andersen with Facebook Find Bigfoot, and I'm here with Melissa, who's contacted our page about some sightings back in, what time frame was that again, Melissa?
I think the first one was around 93, and the second one was probably a couple years after that.
Okay, so you had two different incidences. Tell us about the first one.
Well, I was sleeping in bed. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, let me first say, I lived in northern Michigan, the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan.
Okay.
And we lived on 40 acres, all bordered by, I don't know how many acres, but loads of state property. So we didn't have any neighbors for miles. So I was sleeping. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. My ex-husband, wakes me up, and he says, "Come here, you got to hear this." I'm like, okay. So I get up, and we go to the back porch sliding glass door, and we open it up and step out onto the porch, which is a little covered lean-to kind of porch.
Mm-hmm.
And this noise was coming from probably, I want to say, maybe a few hundred yards away. There was some power lines and actually a ridge line back there also, and it was somewhere back in there. And it was so loud you could feel it.
You could feel the sound?
You could feel it like, if you go to almost like, the cars that go by with the bass, and sometimes you can feel you could feel it. And it was, whatever it was, had a lung capacity that you would not, that I would think would be unbelievable. This was not a bobcat. I've heard bobcats.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a owl. This was not the normal coyotes or whatever that are around that area because I lived there for years and years. So I know it wasn't anything like that. And it was this huge noise that at first sounded almost as if like a woman was being murdered out in the woods.
Hmm.
But then it would taper off to more of a deeper, it's kind of hard to explain. It's almost like a scream turns into a roar, turns into a man screaming, like a high-pitched and then like a roar and then a lower-pitched scream.
You've heard
if you've
Bigfoot
heard
howls
it, it's
before?
really hard to explain.
Yeah, have you heard
Pardon me?
Have you heard Bigfoot howls in the past or been on websites where you...
I have.
Yeah, did it sound like that, like a howl in the forest, or you think there was something else going on?
It wasn't a howl. It was, I guess if I would have to say it, it sounded more like maybe some type of a call,
mm-hmm.
more than a...
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a longing sound or a lonely sound. It was just this thing making this noise. And after about, this went on for, it went off every couple minutes for probably a good half hour to an hour. And every time it would go, it was almost exactly the same. Not exactly, but close enough where you knew it was the same thing. Because it crossed my mind, could that be something mechanical?
Yeah.
But it wasn't, you know what all these things go through your head.
Yeah, well, what is the source of the sound, and where is it coming from? What could it possibly be? Was there any time at that point, it sounds like you're looking back and assuming it's probably a Bigfoot. It sounds like it may have been, especially given the part of the world you were in. Did you at the time think it was, or is this looking back on it later saying, oh my gosh, that was a Bigfoot sound?
Looking back on it later. I never... at that time, Bigfoot never entered my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what did enter my mind, and this might help date it a little better, actually, what did enter my mind was the popular thing at the time was Blair Witch.
Oh, yeah.
That Blair Witch movie. And that's what came to my mind. And I was like, but I know it's not a person because it's way, way, way too loud.
Too deep of a sound. Yeah, too powerful.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it was just, it was really, really creepy.
Assuming that this was...
my ex-husband wanted to go out there, and I'm like, I'm not going out there.
Yeah. Assuming it was a Bigfoot, do you think it was a Bigfoot in pain or struggle, or do you think this was just some sort of a call?
See, that's it. I don't know. It didn't sound like any, it could have been pain, but there wasn't any, a lot of times you hear them and you think, oh, that just sounds like such a sad, moaning call. It wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was just, if I could say anything, it was more like, it sounded like it was really pissed off. Mm-hmm. It could have been that.
And do you think there was just one? There weren't two fighting or some...
I didn't hear... If I could go back now and do it, I would have listened closer to background noise to see if there was another noise coming from way, way, way far off. Mm-hmm. But we were so concentrated on what was going on there that in between calls we were talking and so on. So I suppose there could have been a quote-unquote answer from somewhere far away, but we didn't hear it because we were too busy. Every time there was a break in the sound, we were like, oh my God, what do you think that could be? And blah, 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 where's it coming from? And, just, I don't want them to hear it and be scared to death.
I want to just go back and look at it.
It was loud enough that I thought it could wake them up.
Yeah. I have kids too. You don't want to do that. But let kids sleep.
Right.
I'm looking back at the official BFRO report, which is, for those that are on that page, it's report number 27009. I'm going to read back the description you gave at that time. So it said we had 40 acres and a corner lot. This was coming from the state-owned woods to our southwest. It sounded like someone or something was dying. It was terrible. It went on for 30 seconds or so, or almost an hour. I've heard other animals in the area, bobcat, coyote, fox, birds, etc. This was nothing like that. It was very eerie and haunting. Also, that following summer when I was coming home from work, I was coming down one of the many dirt back roads to get to home, and I saw what at first I thought might be a horse.
I was coming home from work, and I would cut through the quote-unquote backwoods to get home, and that way I didn't have to go through town, and I would turn off of, I would be going east on M32, which runs like from Alpena to Gaylord, and I would turn off on, the name of the road escapes me now, McCormick Lake Road, and it's like a hairpin turn. So when you turn, you're heading east, and you make this hairpin turn, and now you're heading west, parallel to the highway.
Okay.
And in between the highway and this dirt road is probably 80 feet of, well, it starts out small and then it widens as you go, of cedar swamp muck, just the trees. No matter what time of day it is, it's pitch black, it's dark in there. You can't see in there. It's just a cedar swamp. And I came around that hairpin turn, and I got a ways where the woods started to get thicker and thicker, and I could see, from where I was, I could still kind of see through the sunshine coming down on the highway side, but you know what I'm saying? I could almost see through the cedar forest, but you couldn't, see in it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and it was moving so fast. The very first thing that popped into my head was a neighbor of ours' horse got loose. A guy that lived way down the road had horses, and I thought a black horse must have gotten loose because nothing else could run. It was running fast enough to where I thought it had to be, I guess, a horse.
Sure.
Well, I kind of slowed down a little bit, and I lost it for a second. But when I looked over and I saw it for just a few seconds, I saw basically was a silhouette because the sun was shining behind it, and it was dark in the cedar swamp where it was. So I didn't get any good details. I saw head and shoulders and part of an arm as it was swinging back, probably from the elbow to the shoulder. And then I saw between a couple of the trees 2 very thick legs. So whatever it was on 2 legs, and I could see the head and the shoulders, no neck, but the head and the shoulders. Now, I didn't notice at the time, but I wasn't really looking for it either. I didn't notice a coned head. It actually had more of a, from what I can picture in my head right now, more of I want to say more of a rounded or squared head, and then down the back, almost like long hair in the back.
And was it in movement when you gathered all these details?
But it was moving, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was moving very fast, and I just, like I said, I caught a glimpse of it for maybe just a couple of seconds. Maybe, I don't know, 3 seconds or so.
How fast do you think you were going?
Well, I was on a dirt road, and I had just made that turn, so I wasn't going more than, I mean, even if I had got up to full speed of what I normally drive on that road, I couldn't have been going more than 30.
Okay.
Because that's a road, you know, there's lots of bumps, and you just can't go very fast on that road, especially that time of year. And this was in the summer, I believe, because
do you think it saw you, was spooked by you, or was it already in motion?
I don't know. I never saw it look my way. But when I came around that curve, I suppose if it was crouched in there somewhere, I could have spooked it. I don't know. I was in a little geo-tracker at the time. And I did notice the height of it, and as thick as the legs were. And again, at this point in my life, I wasn't thinking Bigfoot. I wasn't really, not that I wasn't aware of Bigfoot, but, you know, it was kind of a joke, whatever.
Yeah.
And, but I do remember thinking that I was afraid because I had to go where I had to go to get home. As fast as that thing was moving, technically, it could have about 3 or 4 different ways it could have gone, where it would either cut me off or cross the road in front of me, or, you know what I'm saying? And I was in this little geo-tracker with a soft top, and I'm like, well, as big as that thing was, even if it was a bear, I don't know what I was thinking it was at the time, but whatever it was, as big as it was, it could peel this thing open like a tin can if it wanted to, you know. There's not a whole lot I could have done. And I was very scared that I was going to run across whatever it was again on my way home.
Well, that's interesting. So you had some fear about it, and yet you only saw it for a few seconds, right? Just kind of a quick look, glance, and you questioned what it was, but you just kept moving.
Right.
And you felt fear about it. That's interesting. And this was just like the same year of the previous incident, right, when you heard the howl?
Yeah. And I can't tell you if those two events linked up in my mind at the time or not. I don't know. But when I looked, I saw it for a few seconds. I looked back to the road to make sure I was, you know, not going to go off the road. And when I looked back, I didn't see it. I don't know if it stopped and crouched down. I don't know if it got away from me because it was going so fast. I don't know if it veered off somewhere. But when I looked over, and it should have been there, and it wasn't, that's what freaked me out. I looked back, nothing.
And it was just gone. Do you think it must have gone deeper into that thicket or that marsh that you described? It must have headed in that other direction.
We kept running because that thicket was almost shaped like a V. Where I turned, it was kind of narrow, and the farther down you go, the wider it gets, and the farther away from the main road you get. You know what I'm saying? Like a big triangle goes down to McCormick Lake. So the route it was headed, had it kept just running the way it was running, you know, if it was going fast enough, I guess it could have got out of my sight. But my first thought was whatever it was, either stopped behind a tree or crouched down, because there was still enough sunlight coming in behind that cedar swamp at the time. I should have still been able to see it after turning away for just a second, and I couldn't.
Well, it certainly sounds like it must have stopped, or once it noticed the car or vehicle, it may have frozen and gone behind a tree, and which they often do. They're nicknamed tree peekers, right? They go in and out, and they know where to stand to avoid your point of view. So, interesting.
Right, and now I'm knowing what I know now, because I can't remember what happened. It wasn't something that happened to me, but I can't remember what it was that kind of got me interested in the Bigfoot. And then when I did go back and say, hey, maybe that's what that was, maybe that's what that sound was, then I really got into researching the whole Sasquatch thing, and following some of these researchers and so on and so forth. And now I know, I don't know, my theory now when I look back on it is possibly if there was a young one, I scared the adult, it ran back to wherever the young one was, you know, and crouched down next to it or grabbed it and went behind a tree or whatever. But knowing what I know now, looking back, I think that may have been the situation. At the time, I had no clue.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking very possibly there may have been a young one sitting, you know, wherever.
Somewhere in the swamp, and the parent was running to protect it, or, yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
help hide it, protect it, get it out of there, whatever.
Have you had anything you've noticed since then, now that you're more aware of it? Any incidences?
No, it was a few years after that I moved back downstate, and I'm in a pretty urban area now.
Okay.
So I would love to.
Now
I've signed
more.
up for the BFRO expeditions now that I know more. I mean, if I had the money, I would love to, you know, go to Oregon or Washington or Northern California or Canada or any, you know, I'd love to do that. But, and now my son that was fairly small when it happened, the howling, he's 20 now, and he's really, because I've since told him what happened to me years ago and what I think it is now, so he's interested in it.
Oh, good. Well, hey, it passes from one generation to the next. That's great.
Right, and I have no problem with people. You know, you say I'm crazy, you can say whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, this is what happened, and.
Well, Melissa, we thank you for contacting Facebook Find Bigfoot and describing your sightings, your experiences. It's just fascinating.
No problem.